Hey everyone, today we're ranking and explaining every survivor perk in the game, from worst to best. Let's get into it. In 104 we have Red Herring. This is a very awkward deception perk. You activate it by working on a generator for a few seconds. After this, you can go to a locker and create a fake noise notification at the gen you were just working on. This perk is awful. It will basically never work, and you have to go so out of your way to make it work that it simply just isn't worth the time. Next up in 103 we have Soul Survivor. This perk will reduce the range at which your aura can be read each time a teammate dies. This perk is bad because its activation relies on the death of teammates. Believe it or not, you don't want your teammates to be dead, and if they are, the game is probably lost anyway, and this tiny buff is not going to help you. In 102 we have Mettle of Man. This perk is just a bit of a hassle. It requires 3 protection hits to activate. After the 3rd protection hit, you do not take any damage on the next hit. Again, this is bad purely for the activation being so time consuming, and the subsequent effect simply not making up for that. This perk is fun, but a time waster. It also has this weird caveat of revealing your aura after you've been healed, after its activation. In 101 we have Up the Ante. Up the Ante is a luck-based perk. Luck increases your odds of unhooking yourself, that's all it does. This perk increases your luck by 3% for each teammate alive, up to a total of 9%. This takes your base self-unhook chance of 4% to 15%, which is a relatively considerable increase. This perk is, however, extremely niche in application and largely counterproductive, because attempting to unhook yourself is generally just a bad idea. The reason I'm not completely tanking this perk's ranking is because a full team of Up the Antes can actually be pretty great. Still a one-time use perk, and it's luck-based. Not the best. In 100 we have Slippery Meat. Slippery Meat, in a similar way to Up the Ante, also is vaguely okay if used in a full team. This perk grants you 3 additional unhook chances when on your first hook. It also boosts your luck by 4%. This means you have more chances at a higher 8% escape rate. This isn't actually that bad. Still, self-unhooking is never really a strategy, because you're still essentially rolling a dice. Paired with Up the Ante though, I believe your luck can reach around 46%, again within a full team though, and that's really committing to this build, and even then you're really rolling the dice still. In 99 we have Buckle Up. This perk reveals to you the auras of teammates in the dying state in a range of 48 meters. It also lets you see the progress of their recovery through the intensity of their aura on a white to red gradient. Finally, once you revive someone off the ground, you see the killer's aura for 10 seconds. This perk, again, super situational. You're better off just having We're Gonna Live Forever or any other healing perk. The best part of this perk is probably the aura effect, which may provide some minimal useful information. The number of times this will come into play is just very few. In 98 we have No Mither. No Mither is not actually quite as bad as is often perceived. It isn't good, but it isn't outright bad. This perk makes you injured for the entire trial, and broken, so you cannot heal out of this injured state. However, it gives you a 75% reduction to your grunts of pain, allowing some stealth. Your recovery speed is increased by 25% when on the ground, and you can fully recover from the dying state as many times as you want. Finally, you leave no blood. This perk is an extreme trade-off, but one that I would argue is relatively viable, depending on how confident you are. It's a risk, but there are a good set of benefits to this perk too. At least it does something. In 97 we have Left Behind. Left Behind is a perk that reveals the aura of the hatch when within 32 meters of it. This perk is pretty bad because nowadays the hatch will only spawn when you are the last alive, making the potential circumstances of this perk actually getting used incredibly narrow. Also, the hatch makes a very loud sound. Typically you don't need a perk to find it. This perk maybe gives you a tiny bit of a better chance to find the hatch before the killer, but that situation is already a rare one in itself. Really not worth running in my opinion. In 96 we have Diversion. Diversion is a deception perk that allows you to throw a pebble, creating a noise notification and a set of fake scratch marks in the place that it lands. To activate the perk, you first have to be inside the killer's terror radius for 30 seconds. This is an easy activation, but the effect itself of the perk just simply isn't that strong. Again, fun to use. but most of the time the killer will see the notification and just ignore it. They probably have somewhere else more important they're going to want to pressure. In 95 we have Corrective Action. Corrective Action is a perk that saves a generator from exploding when someone else fails a skill check. This works on a token basis. You can get up to 5 tokens, gaining more when you hit great skill checks. Each time a teammate fails a skill check, 1 token is consumed, and it gives them a good skill check instead. This sounds really great, but realistically, most of the time teammates just don't fail skill checks, at least not enough to warrant an entire perk centered around reducing it. It also requires you to be on that gen with them, which won't always be possible. Personally, from using this, it's barely ever activated, so I don't think it's particularly worthwhile. In 94 we have Blood Pact, a very odd perk. This perk allows you and the Obsession to see each other's auras when either of you are injured. If you then heal one another, you gain a 7% boost to movement speed. However, you have to stay within 16 meters of each other, otherwise the effect goes away. Weird perk, super situational, but fun. There's no real application for this really, it's largely just a fun mini-game perk. If you can utilize that 7% whilst keeping in range of the Obsession, it can be vaguely decent, but that is quite hard to do. At the very least, you can always see someone's aura, so you know you can get an easy heal at pretty much any point in the game. In 93 we have Self-Preservation. Self-Preservation is another pretty dreadful perk. This perk will remove your scratch marks, grunts of pain, and bleeding for 10 seconds whenever a teammate is hit within 16 meters of you. This sounds kinda cool until you realize that it doesn't really do anything. If a killer is hitting your teammate, they aren't going for you, so all these effects aren't really doing anything. The most useful situation this can be used in is if you're getting tunneled and a teammate body blocks for you, giving you distance. Again, so situational though, largely pointless perk. In 92 we have Ace in the Hole. Ace in the Hole is a perk that gives you add-ons when you loot items from chests. It will guarantee 1 and have a 50% chance of a second. This add-on does give the possibility for pretty good chest pulls. You can get medkits with styptic agents and such. Most of the time it'll be a toolbox though, or too many flashlights to even make use of. With keys now nerfed, and maps being fairly average, a medkit is all that's needed. This is a luck-based perk really, and you're better off just bringing a medkit to begin with. In 91 we have This Is Not Happening. This Is Not Happening gives you a 30% larger great skill check zone when injured. That's all it does. It's nice I suppose for a slightly easier time at hitting greats. Great skill checks give you 1% extra gen progress and 5% extra heal progress, so it isn't completely useless. However, this incredibly small buff, only available when injured, is still pretty bottom of the barrel when it comes to perks. In 90 we have No One Left Behind, another situational perk, activated only in the endgame, once an exit gate has been opened. This perk makes unhooking and healing others 50% faster. It shows all survivor auras to you, and it grants 75% more blood points in the altruism category. This at least has a use. There are situations where this will help, but it is very few. Also, the best strategy typically is to 99 the gate, meaning this perk is going to get little to no use in most games, simply put. In 89 we have Autodidact, a token-based perk that will change your healing skill checks to be larger. You begin the trial with your skill checks regressing heals by 25%. For each Autodidact skill check you hit, this number goes up by 15%. For the second skill check you regress by 10%. For the third, you now go into the positive and gain 5% instead of regressing. Upon hitting 5, hitting these skill checks will progress a heal by around half health. This perk is largely a detriment and will often never get past the regression part, due to the skill checks being fairly infrequent, and also that you're not always going to be the one doing the healing. This perk really requires you to work hard for it to work. It can be great, it can also be just straight up detrimental. In 88 we have Breakout, a perk that increases the wiggle speed of teammates by 20% when you are within 6 meters of them being carried. Whilst in this range you also get a 7% boost to movement speed. This is a perk that sounds kind of decent in theory, but in practice I find it's rarely useful, and typically just leads to giving the killer a free hit as someone attempts to speed up a teammate's wiggle. Most of the time a killer is close enough to a hook in any given spot for this not to matter basically. In 87 we have Flip Flop, a perk that converts recovery progress in the dying state into wiggle progress when picked up, at a 50% conversion rate. This perk is an interesting anti-slug perk. that aims to let you wiggle out of the killer's grasp if they leave you on the ground too long. This works sometimes, but you're better off just running Unbreakable, which just guarantees your survival if left on the ground. In 86 we have Lightweight, a perk that will make the scratch marks you leave behind disappear 3 seconds faster. This is quite an outdated perk, but one I don't think is dreadful. It's a solid passive effect that requires nothing of you, and has potential to help out. It can also be relatively strong on indoor maps in particular, or maps dense with pallets such as the game. Scratch marks remain for 10 seconds normally, so this reduction to 7 has potential to help, but still a 3-second difference is just that. In 85 we have Solidarity, a perk that will heal you as you heal someone else, converting 50% of all heal progress you make onto others, also onto yourself. So you fully heal someone, you'll gain a half heal. This sounds great, but really there aren't many situations where this actually comes in useful, and at best it will maybe save 4 or 5 seconds. If you have enough time to heal multiple people, then that time difference probably doesn't matter too much. Also, you can't use a medkit with this, which seems like a fairly needless stipulation for this perk to have. In 84 we have Technician, a perk that makes generators far safer. When working on them, you'll have a reduced audible range of 8 meters, making them harder to hear for the killer, requiring them to come closer. Technician also makes it so when you fail a skill check on a generator, it won't create a noise notification for the killer, but instead apply an additional regression penalty of 3%. This perk is great when starting out, and it does have some usage, but at the end of the day, most people can hit skill checks, and even if you can't, it might sometimes be better to let the gen explode instead of having it regress more than usual. It depends on the situation, I suppose. In 83 we have Empathic Connection, which is kind of just a worse empathy. This perk activates when a teammate becomes injured. It reveals your aura to them when within 96 meters of you. Upon them finding you, you then get a 10% boost to healing speed. This perk is quite an inefficient way to heal others. The convenience of empathy is that you can see who is injured, then go to them, assessing if it's worth your time. If a teammate sees you on the other side of the map with Empathic Connection and proceeds to run all the way over, it's not the best. Additionally, the 10% bonus to healing speed is absolutely nothing, knocking off a little over a second of time. In 82 we have Poised. Poised hides your scratch marks for 10 seconds after a generator is completed. This can be nice to move away safely after completing a generator. The issue is that if a killer is close by, most of the time they can use their other tracking tool, their eyes, making the lack of scratch marks pretty irrelevant. In Chase, this perk can give sporadic moments of stealth, but most of the time a killer can still either hear you if you're injured, or will have aura-based perks for tracking. This perk has a nice concept, but the randomness of when it will activate makes it inconsistent and marginally helpful at best. In 81 we have Breakdown. Breakdown is a perk that will break a hook upon being unhooked from it. This hook will then take 3 minutes to respawn. You further see the killer's aura for 6 seconds. The best part of this perk, I would argue, is the aura effect, allowing you to see where the killer is, and promptly move in the opposite direction. The hook breaking can be useful in off occasions, when a killer is utilizing the same hook multiple times, or if the hook is situated far away from others. In 80 we have Boil Over. Boil Over increases the effects of your wiggling by 100%, making it harder for the killer to get you to a hook. It also obscures hooks within a 16-meter range whilst being carried, making it further harder to find a hook. Finally, if the killer drops from a great height whilst carrying you, your wiggle progression will receive a third of its current progress, giving you a slightly faster wiggle. This perk is very average, but can be fairly strong on occasion, and particularly in an altruistic team. The better effect I believe to be the extra wiggle effects and the blocked hooks, which can work to your favour with killers who don't know hook placements. In 79 we have Object of Obsession, a perk that will reveal the killer's aura every time they reveal yours. Each time this happens you get a 6% boost to repairing, healing and cleansing. If you're the obsession, every 30 seconds your aura is revealed to the killer for 3 seconds. This perk increases the odds of becoming the obsession by 100%. This perk is both decent and quite detrimental, depending on how confident you are in your looping. If you're confident you can avoid the killer, this perk is pretty solid and gives amazing information. Equally, it can be a very detrimental perk for someone not so confident, with it giving a near live feed of your location to the killer every 30 seconds. Largely, you're better off just running another aura perk entirely, one that just doesn't give the killer information to begin with. In 78 we have Wake Up. Wake Up will boost the speed at which you open exit gates by 25%, and will also allow you to see the auras of the exit gates in a 128 meter range, once all gens are completed. This is a nice increase and knocks off 5 seconds from opening the gates. It's still a very endgame focused perk, and sometimes won't even come into play if you aren't the one to open the gates. The effect isn't to be frowned at though, particularly with killer perks like Remember Me receiving buffs recently. This perk can also come in absolutely clutch, if on a map with exit gates close together, such as Midwich. In 77 we have Visionary, the perk that reveals the auras of generators to you in a 32 meter range. This makes it easy to locate a generator and get to working on it. This is nice on indoor maps, where the layouts can sometimes be a little confusing. Largely though, this perk isn't going to be that great in most people's hands, because I think generally people know where gens spawn, and the time wasted over finding one is going to be fairly negligible anyway. This perk also has the weird downside of a cooldown when a gen is popped, disabling the perk for 16 seconds. This seems weird because after you complete a gen, you want to find another, and this stops that. Very strange. In 76 we have Repressed Alliance, a perk that activates after working on a generator for 45 seconds. Once active, you can press the active ability button to block a generator for 30 seconds. The main usage of this is to stop a killer from regressing a generator, or to stop it from being affected by perks like Ruin, giving you time to loose the killer and get back to it later on, or simply hold its progress until a teammate comes along. It's a nice idea in theory, but I find generally it doesn't come in too handy. If a killer has sight of you, they probably aren't that concerned about regressing the generator you are working on, at least until they've gotten you onto a hook. And by then, that 30-second block is over. There are certainly situations where this has potential to be useful. In 75 we have Urban Evasion, a perk that increases your crouch speed by 100%. This perk can be useful for avoiding the killer, allowing you to move around an object quickly and sneakily. Most of the time, when crouched, you don't really need to move that much though, and you're better off just standing briefly and moving to a new location to hide. This perk has some good potential against Hag, allowing you to quickly move over her traps without triggering them. That's rare though, and the effect itself is below average really in most situations. Still a decent evasion perk. In 74 we have Boon Dark Theory. Uh-oh, this perk is not good. This perk applies to a dull totem, making it a boon. Once applied in a 24 meter radius, all survivors gain a 2% boost to movement speed. This lingers for 4 seconds after leaving the radius. This is a fun idea, but unfortunately the radius is far too small to be significant, and even when you do get some very minor value from this, the killer's Bloodlust tier 1 effect is going to cancel it out regardless. A very situational boon that just won't get you much value. In 73 we have Pharmacy, a perk that allows you to open chests 80% faster, and will guarantee a green medkit the first time you open a chest. It also makes chests harder to hear for the killer, reducing their audible range by 8 meters. This perk is nice for the medkit mainly, which will provide a speedy and guaranteed self-heal. The extra opening speed is also decent, and cuts down wasted time spent opening chests, but there's still any number of better healing perk choices, and it can be pretty much replaced by just bringing a medkit into the trial to begin with. In 72 we have Plunderer's Instinct, a perk that reveals the auras of chests and dropped items within a 32 meter range. It also gives a far higher chance at finding a better item than usual in a chest. This perk can let you pull some better items from chests, like stronger medkits, and more unique items like keys or Alex's toolbox. This is a straightforward and solid chest perk. If you're going to spend time opening chests, it's best to bring this along. In 71 we have For the People, a perk that allows you to transfer a health state from yourself to a teammate. In the process you become broken for 60 seconds, and become the Obsession. This is quite an interesting perk, and one that requires caution in its usage, as it can be both a lifesaver and it can benefit the killer. It's a risky thing to do, but can also save a team, and the times in which it is actually usable are small, typically requiring a killer to be slugging. In 70 we have Guardian. Guardian is a perk that activates after you unhook someone. It gives the person you unhooked no scratch marks or pools of blood for 8 seconds, further boosting their movement speed by 8%. During this 8 seconds you see the killer's aura. This perk is meant to be an alternative for borrowed time, and it kind of does an okay job at it. The teammate runs away with their buffs helping them, you see the killer and position yourself to take the heat. This is great and all, but borrowed time exists. It's a fun alternative to use, but quite simply, it's a worse one. And that list of buffs for the teammate and the aura for you isn't going to do much if the killer is right by you anyway. This perk kinda misses the point, because as a counter to camping or tunneling, this perk is buffing things in a scenario where the killer is probably an eye shot of the hook, making them all pretty obsolete anyway. It's something, I guess, though. In 69 we have Dance With Me, a perk that removes your scratch marks for 3 seconds after performing a fast action. This can be a fast vault over a pallet or window, or a fast locker exit. This has a cooldown of 40 seconds. This is a perk that can be used for mid-chase stealth to attempt to lose the killer. It can pair well with perks like Lithe and Head On. Largely, the small 3 seconds of no scratch marks isn't always the most useful, even if you break line of sight. Killers can still hear you, and if you're injured, can almost definitely tell the direction you went in. The incredibly long cooldown doesn't do this perk any favors either. In 68 we have Saboteur, a perk that lets you sabotage hooks without needing a toolbox. When a teammate is picked up by the killer, you will see the auras of all hooks within a 56 meter range. Sabotaging will take 2.5 seconds, and once this sabotage is used, you'll get a cooldown of 60 seconds. Sabotaging, I feel, isn't really the best strategy for stopping a teammate from being hooked. I do think at least this perk is nice for fulfilling a specific role and doing it well. If you want to sabotage, this perk is actually good for it. The perk's reliance on sabotaging as a mechanic, though, is more so why I feel it is on the weaker side. In 67 we have Calm Spirit, a perk that will stifle your screams and stop you from alerting crows. This perk has some narrow usage, but is good at what it does do. It's a great counter to Doctor's Shocks and Clown's Bottle Clouds. It's also effective against meta killer perks like Scourge Hook Pain Resonance. You also deny any possible info a killer can gain from the crows being disturbed. This perk is the most relevant it's ever been, but it still isn't that great, and is quite killer dependent. In 66 we have Hope, a perk that activates once all gens have been popped, giving you a 7% boost to movement speed for 120 seconds. This perk is mainly good as a counter to the popular killer perk, Hex No One Escapes Death, which gives the killer a speed boost in the endgame. It's a nice way to even the playing field. It's also just generally nice, and gives you a better shot at escape during a high tension time. It is limited to just 2 minutes though, and again, it only activates if you reach the endgame to begin with. A small but nice bonus if you do though, and surprisingly very effective. In 65 we have Power Struggle, a perk that will let you drop pallets whilst being carried by the killer, stunning them and getting you free. The catch is that you can only do this once your wiggle progression has reached 15%. This perk sounds amazing, but the situations where it is usable are very few. Killers know not to walk through pallets if at all possible, and most of the time you get picked up instantly after being downed, making perks that pair well with this like Flip Flop often fairly ineffective in gaining you progress. When it does work, it's satisfying, but it really doesn't come into play that often. In 64 we have Appraisal, which allows you to search a chest twice, up to 3 times for its 3 tokens. When doing the second search, you also do it at an 80% faster speed. This perk is amazing for producing a large number of medkits and toolboxes. Generally that's all it's really good for. Chests are mostly a waste of time, and should be mainly used as a last resort, for a heal, or when searching for a key or something. Most of the time you don't need 6 medkits. This perk can be a big distraction from gameplay, and can definitely help a lot, but can also be quite detrimental. It really depends on the situation. In 63 we have Fast Track, a perk that gains 3 tokens each time a teammate is hooked. These tokens equate to a percentage gain on a generator when a great skill check is hit. You can get up to 27 tokens, all of which you can hold until you hit a great, in which it will apply the number of tokens as a percentage onto the generator's progress. It's actually a pretty nice buff to have and stacks up passively throughout the match. It's a good improvement over the base 1% a Great usually gives you. Being able to hold the tokens back also allows you to use them tactically to progress the generator you specifically want to, far faster. This perk can be left to not be used though if not many people get hooked. Or alternately, you get hooked the most, gaining no tokens. In 62 we have Bite the Bullet, a perk that removes all sound when you are healing. This includes the grunts of pain and also the sounds of the heal itself. If a skill check is failed whilst healing, it also doesn't make a noise notification for the killer, and only applies a regression penalty of 1%. Overall, this perk is super nice, and can be paired with medkits or self-care to be used for stealth purposes when alone. I do actually think that this perk is pretty solid. Its downside is mainly just that most of the time the killer won't be nearby, so the sound doesn't matter anyway. It's heavily dependent on the situation. In 61 we have Stakeout, a token-based perk. You gain tokens by remaining in the killer's terror radius for 15 seconds. Each token changes a good skill check into a great, and also grants an additional 1% bonus progression. Each skill check hit consumes a token, and you can gain a maximum of 5 at any given time. This perk is actually pretty decent, and a nice little bonus, as even some of the best players aren't always hitting great skill checks. The extra 1% progression provides a solid 6% overall on extra heal progress, and 2% extra gen progress, which isn't to be frowned at. It's also very easy to acquire these tokens passively. In 60 we have Resurgence, a perk that will instantly give you 50% healing progress after being unhooked. This can help cut down heal times and give a better chance at pulling a heal off before a killer returns to a hook. The main issue I have with this perk is that at best, it's knocking off about 16 seconds of heal time, 8 seconds for each time you're unhooked when it comes to heals. That isn't bad, but I think with the abundance of fast ways to heal yourself, this instant progress largely isn't necessary. Not bad, but it's still a 2-use perk with a relatively minor effect. With that said, healing perks are still incredibly good. And with 2 people healing you, this turns an 8-second heal into a 4-second heal, which is kinda crazy. In 59 we have Off the Record, which activates after being unhooked, and will last 80 seconds. For this duration it blocks your aura from being shown to the killer, and your grunts of pain are silent. This can be nice to stop tunneling, but much like other unhook based perks, it only really has the potential to be used twice, and the effect itself is more of just a precaution, and often won't be that useful. If a killer is tunneling you, it won't really matter if you have no grunts of pain. As long as they know your general area, they're probably going to find you regardless. I like the sentiment of this perk, and I don't think it's terrible. It's a short duration of iron will essentially after being unhooked, and a distortion type effect too, but I don't think it's overly effective, especially as a lot of the time you'll be healed right after getting unhooked. Still pretty decent, especially if you're confident being injured. In 58 we have Boon Exponential, a perk that you apply to a dull totem, blessing it, where it then becomes a boon totem. Once active, anyone within a 24-meter range of this totem will be able to fully recover from the dying state as many times as they want, and at twice the usual speed. This perk sounds pretty great in theory, but the amount of times it actually works is very few, although when it does, it is pretty amazing. It's unbreakable, but restricted to a set area, that even if you are near when you go down, requires the killer to further slug you. There's lots of things you need to fulfill before this perk really does anything, and even then, it can be broken if the killer finds it. In 57 we have Deception, a perk that lets you fake entering a locker. When sprinting past a locker, interact with it to create a fake noise notification, cause the doors to flap open, and remove your blood trails and scratch marks for 3 seconds. This then has a cooldown of 40 seconds. This perk can be pretty solid for mid-chase deception and tricking killers into opening lockers. Its consistency kind of depends on the awareness of the killer. Some will always fall for it, others never will. It's really a bit of a coin toss. Either way, I would argue the ease of removing scratch marks is still a decent effect in itself. With rooms with multiple lockers, this perk can also be fairly strong, particularly when paired with head-on. In 56 we have Flashbang, which activates after working on a generator for 50% of its progress, or about 40 seconds. Once active, you can go to a locker and craft a Flashbang. These can be used to blind the killer, and save others from the killer's grasp, a bit like you can with a flashlight. This is a pretty decent perk in my opinion. It can be dropped in the middle of chases, and often distract or blind the killer enough to buy a good amount of time. It's hard to get saves with flashbangs consistently, but it can be done. And as the Flashbang can be crafted multiple times, it means you get a few tries at it too. I think with practice, this perk is actually relatively strong. In 55 we have Tenacity, a perk that increases your crawl speed when in the dying state by 50%. It also allows you to recover whilst crawling. This perk can actually be quite effective for countering slugging. It puts pressure on the killer to pick you up. If left, you can quickly crawl away, out of their sight, and toward a teammate. Unbreakable is still a far better alternative, but Tenacity does a good job also. In 54 we have Streetwise, a perk that will make your items lose their charges 25% slower, extending their duration. This effect will also apply to the items of others within 8 meters of you, lingering for 15 seconds after they leave this radius. This can be quite good for getting as much possible value out of toolboxes, and for extending the use of medkits. Most other items don't really need this effect. The effect is nice to have, although I do think there are better alternatives to extending item duration. But hey, this still gives a sizable and worthwhile amount, if you plan on bringing a strong item into the upcoming trial. In 53 we have Leader, a perk that boosts the action speeds of your teammates when they are within 8 meters of you. It will increase their healing, sabotaging, unhooking, cleansing, opening, and unlocking by 25%. This effect lingers for 15 seconds when they leave this range. This is a nice little buff to apply to others, and means you get slightly quicker heals, and can help to speed the opening of gates and such. This perk is pretty solid. The main thing that is not so great about it is that you don't really get to see its effect too well, as it applies to others. Often running a perk for yourself is more beneficial, and is a better replacement over this smaller buff to others, because you can directly use it. In 52 we have Premonition, a perk that will alert you with an auditory warning when you are looking in the killer's direction. This has a 45-degree detection cone, and a 36-meter range, and a cooldown of 30 seconds. This perk can notify you of a killer's approach, particularly a stealth killer's, giving you a head start before they reach you. The only reason I don't think this perk is that amazing is because most of the time you can hear a killer approaching within a 32-meter range through the terror radius. Again, for stealth killers though, this perk is pretty nice. It's one of those perks that I think is overall nice to have, but I don't feel it's overly useful or necessary really. In 51 we have Lucky Break, a perk that activates after becoming injured. When active it will suppress all bleeding and scratch marks for 60 seconds. Once this time is up, this perk deactivates. This effect is quite a strong one, especially when paired with Iron Will. Unfortunately, due to the incredibly short duration of 60 seconds, this perk often won't get the time to shine. Most of the time you're going to shred through this time, when the killer may not even be near you, as you search for a heal. At its best, this perk can make you near untraceable, but I feel that is far too circumstantial to be reliable. In 50 we have Kinship, a perk that pauses the hook timer when on the second stage, and with a teammate in a 16-meter range, pausing it for a total of 34 seconds. This perk is meant to punish camping, buying you an extra 34 seconds of time, wasting the killer's time, and allowing your teammates to formulate a plan as they come to save you, or push for a gen finish. This perk is pretty great, and is actually a really amazing tool for punishing a killer for camping. The downside, as is for many perks, is that if a killer doesn't camp, it just isn't really worth it. And sometimes all this perk will do is make you struggle a little longer, only to still die. In 49 we have Distortion, a perk that begins with 4 tokens. Each time the killer attempts to reach your aura, it will not be revealed to them, and for the next 10 seconds, your scratch marks are removed, and a token is consumed. This perk can be very effective at keeping you hidden from the killer, but it kind of hinges on the killer having aura perks to begin with. Typically a killer with Barbecue will shred through these tokens in no time, and soon leave you without a perk, after around 4 hooks. A lot of the time too, this perk can be kind of a detriment to your team, drawing attention away from yourself, and simply sending the killer their way. Regardless, in many situations, this perk is genuinely helpful. Equally, there's a lot of times where it does nothing or doesn't help. In 48 we have Aftercare, a perk that creates an aura bond between yourself and anyone who you perform altruistic actions on, or who performs altruistic actions on you. This can apply to all teammates and will last until you get hooked, where all these formed connections disappear. This perk is quite strong actually, and allows you to get solid information on the whereabouts of teammates, with an aura that has no range cap, allowing you to see teammates you have a bond with, anywhere. The fact it all relies on altruistic actions and can all be lost, is definitely a sizable downside though. In 47 we have Blast Mine, a perk that activates after working on a generator for 66% of its progress, which is around 50 seconds alone. Once active, you can install a trap onto a generator, which remains active for 45 seconds. If the generator is kicked in this window, it will trigger, stunning the killer, and blinding them briefly. An actively trapped generator is also highlighted in yellow for other survivors. This is a nice slowdown to have, and the yellow aura shown to others is actually a great tool for coordination, and drawing others to come assist you on a gen. The actual Blast Mine part isn't really the best, and is more of a fun effect. In 46 we have Quick and Quiet, a perk that makes your fast actions silent. This includes fast vaults, fast locker exits, or entrances. It has a cooldown of 20 seconds after use. This perk is actually a pretty all-round good perk, allowing you to run around, saving a few seconds here and there when moving from gen to gen, not having to worry about fast vaulting, and further giving possible stealth potential in chase. It also pairs very well with perks like Head On. I would argue in fact that this perk has more value as a utility perk for other perks. Alone I would still classify it as average, but a consistently helpful benefit to have. In 45 we have Deliverance, a perk that activates after safely saving a teammate from a hook. Once active, you can guarantee to unhook yourself. Once you unhook yourself, you become broken for 60 seconds. I'm personally not a fan of this perk, due to its reliance on needing to save someone prior, which often won't be achieved if you are chase first, or you simply aren't the best person to be getting a save. I feel it pushes you to go for a save to activate it, and when active, it's just as easy to get a teammate to come get you. In its best moments, it can force a lot of pressure. In its worst, it does absolutely nothing. I personally think this perk is pretty average. In 44 we have Clairvoyance, a perk that activates after breaking a totem. After doing so, you can hold down the active ability button to reveal all exit gates, generators, hooks, chests, and the hatch within a 64 meter range for up to 9 seconds. This perk is pretty amazing, and great for understanding the layout of your surroundings, locating generators, and even for things like sabotaging plays. The main downside of this perk is that you have to break a totem, which may be bad if a teammate has a boon. I would argue the info gain though is pretty worth it. In 43 we have Parental Guidance, a perk that removes your scratch marks, grunts of pain, and pools of blood after stunning the killer for 7 seconds. This perk has some value, and can be used particularly well on indoor maps, and to make a quick escape, using the corners to your advantage. Largely, I think this perk is kind of average though, and is not going to work a lot of the time, particularly as killers will be cautious usually when it comes to getting pallet stunned. I like the possibility this perk has, but I don't think it gets to fulfill it that often really. In 42 we have Botany Knowledge, a perk that increases your healing speed by 33%, and the efficiency of your healing items by 33% too. This perk is a really nice constant buff to have, particularly when bringing along a medkit. The base 33% knocks off around 4 seconds on a heal, which again is just a nice consistent buff to have. The extra efficiency to medkits is also incredibly nice, allowing a yellow medkit to extend to 2 heals without the use of add-ons. In 41 we have Renewal, a perk that activates after completing a full heal onto a teammate. After doing so, you will instantly heal after 20 seconds. Although during this time, you will also be broken. This perk can be a great way to save time, by not needing to heal after being unhooked, and simply getting on with the match. The activation isn't always something that will be easily attainable, and if you're getting camped, it can mess up the heal you get. It's a perk that, a bit like Deliverance, has potential to have quite a strong effect, but it requires a lot of things to fall into place. Overall, it's pretty average in that sense. In number 40 we have Rookie Spirit, a perk that activates after hitting 3 skill checks on a generator. Once active, you'll see the auras of all regressing generators. This perk is incredibly underrated I feel. It allows you to easily stop generators from losing lots of progress, particularly if Ruin is up. It can also be used as an effective tracking tool, allowing you to see where the killer is based on where regressing generators appear. Very solid perk. In 39 we have Boon Shadow Step, a perk that you apply to a totem. Once applied, in a 24 meter range, scratch marks and auras are hidden from the killer. This effect lingers for 4 seconds after leaving this range. This perk can be quite effective on indoor maps in particular, but largely isn't that great a perk for most situations. The small 24 meter range often is not enough space to really get good use of this, and can be awkward unless the boon is set up in a structure, or across multiple floors. The effect itself is strong, but particularly the hidden scratch mark element is not really usable in most circumstances, due to the short range. It's still quite an amazing effect, and the passive block of auras as you work on a gen is a great help too. In 38 we have Dark Sense, a perk that activates after a gen is popped, revealing the killer's aura to you for 5 seconds. Once the final gen is completed, you then see the killer's aura for 10 seconds. This perk is great for knowing the general whereabouts of the killer after popping a gen, getting a good idea of where they are next headed, and allowing you to move the other way. The downside here being that, a lot of the time, all it's going to really show you is their distance, as they're probably coming toward the recently completed gen. This is still a solid info perk, giving consistent and reliable information. In 37 we have Counterforce, a perk that gives you a 20% increase to cleansing speed. When you cleanse a totem, you will see another totem, the one furthest away, for 4 seconds. You'll also gain an additional 20% speed for each totem cleansed. This perk is a particularly good counter to perks like Noed, or hexes in general, allowing you to locate them and destroy them with ease, knowing their location and doing it faster than usual. The main downside of this perk is that totems for survivors at the moment are quite helpful with boons around, so destroying them all like this isn't always the best call if there's no hexes especially, and can even often be a huge waste of time. Largely I like this perk though. In 36 we have Vigil, a perk that reduces the timer of negative status effects by 30% for yourself and others in an 8 meter range. This effect lingers for 15 seconds after this range is left. This perk is particularly good at helping you recover and reuse your exhaustion perks faster, knocking off 12 seconds from their recovery. This perk is nice, but I would say you pretty much need to be running an exhaustion perk to justify it, with most other negative status effects not really mattering much, or affecting you enough for Vigil to take significant effect. In 35 we have Small Game, a perk that will give you an auditory cue when looking toward a totem within 12 meters, and within a 45-degree cone. It has a cooldown of 10 seconds, and has 5 tokens. Each token lost decreases the detection range of the cone, down by 5 degrees. This perk is an amazing counter to Noed, and hexes in general, and it's also a great perk to have for finding good boon spots, or simply finding totems efficiently for your other totem-based perks. In 34 we have Soul Guard, a perk that lets you recover from the dying state as many times as you want if there is an active hex in the trial. Upon recovering from the dying state, you receive an 8-second duration of endurance. If hit during this time, you go into deep wound instead of going down. It then has a cooldown of 30 seconds. The better part of this perk I feel is the endurance effect upon recovering, giving a borrowed time type effect when being picked off the ground, or picking yourself off the ground. This perk is still quite situational though, requiring a hex to be active, which is essentially an active debuff on the team, and further it requires you to be getting slugged. It's a lot of ifs with this perk. In the situations this perk is made for, it's great, but they don't come up often, making this perk relatively average despite its strong effects. In 33 we have Open-Handed, a perk that will boost the aura range of your other aura perks by 16 meters. This is a very underrated perk, and can pair well with a large number of different aura perks, such as Kindred, Bond, and Detective's Hunch. It takes an extra perk slot, and alone it does nothing, but the amount you can buff is quite a bit, especially as this effect also applies to the whole team, regardless of how far they are from you. Having one of these in a team is honestly so nice, and I feel quite an underrated thing to bring. In 32 we have Any Means Necessary, a perk that lets you pick up drop pallets. After doing this you have a cooldown of 60 seconds. This perk will also reveal the auras of all drop pallets to you, making it easy to pick drop pallets back up. This perk is pretty amazing and super useful, in part for the ability to recover the finite number of pallets you have, but also for tracking the killer's position based on where pallets are dropped. A lot of the time you won't get to use the pallet pickup part, as many killers will break most pallets, but the ones you do recover, and the info along with it, makes this perk a pretty solid pick overall. In 31 we have Déjà Vu, a perk that will reveal the auras of the 3 generators in closest proximity to one another at the start of the trial for 40 seconds, and each time a generator is completed. It also tracks these if you have a map. This perk is pretty amazing, identifying the closest gens to make sure you don't get caught in a 3-gen, and also just providing you a number of different options for where you want to begin the objective. Nice and straightforward and consistent information throughout the match. In 30 we have Self-Aware, a perk that will increase your walking movement speed by 20% and allow you to see your own scratch marks. This perk is pretty amazing, allowing you to understand the way your scratch marks land, and also the information you are leaving behind as you move. The increased walk speed pairs well with faking running one way and walking the other. It's also just a nice buff for moving about quicker, and for evasion. Further, it can make holding perks like Sprint Burst a bit less punishing. This is a great utility perk. In 29 we have Self-Care, a perk that lets you heal yourself without the need for a medkit. This action takes a total of 32 seconds. It also decreases the depletion rate of healing items by 20%. This perk is often looked at as bad, due to how long it takes to heal. However, the ability to heal on command, and without the need for medkits or a teammate, is an incredibly strong ability. The secret to this perk is just knowing when to use it, and when to wait for a teammate to heal you. In 28 we have Smash Hit, which is an exhaustion perk that activates after stunning a killer with a pallet. Once stunned, you gain a 4-second duration of extra speed, letting you gain significant distance. You then have a cooldown of 40 seconds. This exhaustion perk technically gives you the most distance out of any exhaustion perk, seeing as you can stun and also get a speed boost, almost doubly slowing the killer down. The main downside to this perk is that its activation is probably the hardest out of any exhaustion perk, requiring you to stun the killer with a pallet. If you have a cautious killer, this perk isn't going to get much use, if any. Pallets are also a finite resource that others will also be using. It's a good perk, but one that will activate a handful of times, in comparison to almost every other exhaustion perk. In 27 we have Bond, a perk that reveals the auras of other survivors within a 36 meter range. This perk is amazing for general team coordination, and simply knowing the whereabouts of teammates, to help them on gens, heal, or to identify where a killer may be. Really simple perk, but one that provides consistent and reliable information. In 26 we have Desperate Measures, a perk that gives you a 14% boost to healing and unhooking speed for each injured survivor, up to a total of 56%. This perk is particularly strong against killers like Legion, and others that keep you injured. The extra heal speed is very nice to have, cutting down a minimum of 2 seconds, and up to 8 seconds for each heal. The extra unhook speed is also a great benefit to have, with camping killers, or in the endgame, allowing you to quickly unhook others without getting grabbed. This perk is a nice passive buff, and comes in when it needs to, with it activating at times when healing is necessary. In 25 we have Empathy, a perk that lets you see the auras of injured survivors within a 128 meter range. This perk can be great for knowing the location of teammates, the killer, and also giving you a good idea of if you need to be finding that survivor and healing them up, or whether you're better to stay away and remain on a gen or something. This perk does its job well, and in a simple way. The 128 meter range will basically always be enough to locate injured survivors too. In 24 we have Situational Awareness, a perk that reveals your aura to other survivors in a 32 meter range when on a generator. It further reveals the auras of all other survivors for 10 seconds if a teammate is downed, and you're working on a generator. This perk is actually pretty great. It identifies your location to others to come assist you on a generator, and further it encourages you to keep pushing away on the gen, even when someone goes down, revealing other survivors to you, giving you the information on whether you can stick to the gen or you should be going for the save. It's a really nice combo of focusing the objective and almost a kindred-like effect when someone goes down. In 23 we have Inner Healing, a perk that activates after breaking a totem. Once active, this perk will allow you to climb into a locker and heal a health state after 8 seconds. This perk I feel is actually quite overrated. Most of the time I feel you're better off just getting a teammate to heal you, and with Circle of Healing being quite powerful at the moment, breaking totems for self-heals seems like a bit of a waste. Regardless of my own biases though, this perk does still have a strong effect, healing you after 8 seconds, and within the safety of a locker. Breaking totems is also a generally productive action, so this perk is still good. In 22 we have Head On, a perk that activates after being in a locker for 3 seconds. This perk lets you then burst out of the locker, stunning the killer for 3 seconds when they are within range of it. After, you become exhausted for 40 seconds. This perk can be great for getting locker saves, particularly around the basement area. The main downside of this perk I would say is its reliance on lockers, which aren't always in the best places, and can be easily baited by killers, leading to easy downs for them. This perk is underrated when it comes to exhaustion perks, and is an acquired taste. In the right hands, it can be very strong. In 21 we have Detective's Hunch, a perk which activates after a generator is completed. When active, Chests, generators, and totems will all be revealed in a 64 meter range. If holding a map, all this info is also tracked by the map. This perk is really great for information, allowing you to locate hexes, and also the next generator to work on. Nice and concise, simple information, at a good moment of downtime, in between working on generators. In 20 we have We're Gonna Live Forever, a perk that gives you a 100% boost to healing speed on survivors in the dying state. You can further earn tokens with this perk. Each token is earned by either performing a safe hook save, taking a protection hit, or saving a teammate through a pallet stun or flashlight blind. Each token grants you a 25% boost to blood point gains, to a maximum of 100%. Or 4 tokens. This perk's base effect of higher heal speed on dying survivors is great in itself. With the extra BP on top of that, it's a really great perk overall. It encourages altruism and gives a good effect, and also a reward for doing so. In 19 we have Resilience, a perk that gives a 9% boost to healing, sabotaging, unhooking, vaulting, cleansing, opening, and unhooking when injured. This perk is incredibly helpful, reducing basically all action speeds by 9%. It's particularly effective in chases, to get through windows faster. When paired with other injure-based perks like Dead Hard, this perk can be a great asset. An extra 9% to gen speeds knocks around 8 seconds off a gen. Overall, a nice and consistent buff to have when injured, making up for your weakened state, and even buffing you in it, in ways. In number 18 we have Windows of Opportunity, a perk that reveals the auras of breakable walls, pallets, and window vaults within a 32 meter range. This perk is a really solid perk for just knowing the layout of the map, and also seeing the resources available when in chase. You know the exact layout of a loop before going to it, you know the number of pallets, dropped or not, and you know the possible entry points through breakable walls. Really great perk. In 17 we have Balanced Landing, a perk that activates after falling from a great height. Upon doing so you will gain a speed boost for 3 seconds, and become exhausted for 40 seconds after. When falling you will also gain a 75% reduction to your stagger duration, letting you recover quicker, but only when not exhausted. This is one of the worst exhaustion perks, because it is very map dependent, sometimes even having no spots to use it, aside basement stairs, making it a risky pick a lot of the time. It does shine more so than some of the stronger exhaustion perks though on indoor maps, where there is plenty of area to use it, and confuse the killer with your extra speed. In 16 we have Overcome, an exhaustion perk that will extend the duration of your post-hit speed boost by 2 seconds. This then has a cooldown of 40 seconds. This perk can be great for getting a lot of distance after a hit, and sometimes cutting chases short as a result of that. I would argue you're better off just running Sprint Burst, which has a similar chase ending effect, as Overcome requires you to get injured, which isn't always possible. If you're injured with this perk, you can't do anything, which isn't the case for any other exhaustion perk. The one time this perk is really nice to have is around camping killers, giving a lot of distance after a BT hit. Overall though, there's better alternatives to Overcome. Regardless, it is an exhaustion perk still, and it can end chases sometimes instantly, so it has value nonetheless, just not one of my personal favourites. In number 15 we have Will Make It, a perk that will give you a 100% boost to healing speed after unhooking a survivor for the next 90 seconds. This perk is amazing, giving a considerable bump to healing speeds for a duration that can easily last for multiple people. Doubling healing speeds makes heals 8 seconds shorter. The main downside here is that it doesn't apply to you, but arguably it doesn't need to. The time you are cutting down by using this is enough to make up for it. This I feel is one of the best healing perks after Circle of Healing. Easy activation, huge bump to heal speeds, and a long duration. In 14 we have Built to Last, a perk that lets you restore the charges on your items. Once an item has been fully depleted, enter a locker to restore 99% of its charges after 12 seconds. Each time this is done, the replenished charges are reduced by 33%. This is incredibly good for both medkits and strong toolboxes, allowing an insane amount of heals, and long durations of speedy gen progress. This perk is quite underrated, and I would argue in this current heal meta is a meta perk, largely due to the healing potential it provides. In 13 we have Alert, a perk that will reveal the killer's aura for 5 seconds, whenever they break a generator, pallet, or breakable wall. This perk is amazing, and will give you a near live location on the killer. Killers are always going to be breaking things, stopping gens, in the middle of chases, it doesn't matter, they will be breaking stuff. This perk providing that reveal onto them at such a high frequency is so useful for coordination and information, and your general positioning. This is one of the best information perks I feel. In 12 we have Spine Chill, a perk that will light up when a killer is looking at you, within a 36 meter range. Once active, you're 10% more likely to get a skill check. Your skill check zones are 10% smaller, but you do get an increase of 6% to repairing, healing, sabotaging, unhooking, vaulting, cleansing, opening, and unlocking. This perk is pretty amazing, identifying an approaching killer, but also for chases, with its extra vault speed. It further provides easier gen progress, giving more skill checks, and therefore more opportunity to boost the gen speed, whilst also providing a base 6% increase. This perk is super nice to have and covers many fronts. In number 11 we have Kindred. Kindred is incredibly underrated. This perk lets you see the auras of all other survivors when hooked, or when another survivor is hooked. It also lets you see the aura of the killer if they are within 16 meters of the hook. It further provides all your teammates with this same information if you were hooked. This perk is so amazing for coordination, determining the killer's next target, and generally just for team efficiency, and also identifying camping and such. In number 10 we have Prove Thyself, a perk that increases gen speeds by 15% for survivors within 4 meters of you, to a maximum of 45%. You then also get a 100% increase to BP gains for cooperative actions. This perk is insane for gen speeds, allowing you to shred through them with little to no effort. Gens are the main objective, and this perk increases their speed by a sizable amount, making it very solid. In number 9 we have Life, an exhaustion perk that activates after fast vaulting either a pallet or a window, giving a 3-second speed boost, and making you exhausted for 40 seconds. This perk is an easily activatable exhaustion perk that gives you a great head start in chase, or mid-chase. The main downside of this, I would say, is that it can sometimes be activated at unpreferable times. Often in chase, you're going to vault quite early on, meaning you don't have any option over using Lithe or not. Still, it's a considerable help, and probably one of the most solid exhaustion perks. Simple and largely effective. In number 8 we have Adrenaline, a perk that activates in the endgame. Once all gens have been completed, Adrenaline activates, instantly healing you by a health state, and giving you an increased movement speed for 5 seconds. You will then become exhausted for 40 seconds. This perk can really come in clutch in the endgame, healing you from dying to healthy, or injured to healthy. It also heals you off hook, if you were hooked when the gens popped. The extra speed is a nice bonus too. Whatever situation you're in, Adrenaline pretty much always helps, scaling from minimally to completely saving your life. In number 7 we have Decisive Strike, a perk that activates after being unhooked, and remains active for the next 60 seconds. During this time, if the killer picks you up, you can stun them for 5 seconds after hitting a skill check, getting free of their grasp. Doing so will make you the Obsession. During the 60-second window, repairing, healing, blessing, cleansing, sabotaging, or unhooking will deactivate the perk. This perk is an anti-tunnel perk, making it near impossible to tunnel you. This perk is strong simply for its existence. This perk essentially denies one of the strongest strategies in the game for killer, or at least heavily punishes it. In number 6 we have Unbreakable, a perk that lets you completely recover from the dying state once per trial, at a 35% increased speed. This perk is the best anti-slug perk in the game, and in general is a means to pressure killers who hesitate in picking you up. Having the power to pick yourself up and choose when to do it is a really nice ability, and can often save games that seem lost, alleviating pressure that the killer has built up. In number 5 we have Iron Will. Iron Will quite simply makes your grunts of pain when injured silent. This is great for stealth and making it harder in general for killers to track you. It's also great because of how simple it is. You become injured and you receive the very helpful buff of no grunts of pain. This makes playing injured far safer, and for a lot of people means there's no need to heal until a teammate arrives. Removing the audible tracking for a killer in itself is incredibly good, and again, super easy to activate. In number 4 we have Boon's Circle of Healing, a perk that applies to totems. Once applied, anyone in a 24 meter range can self-care, and receive a 75% bonus to heal speeds. However, it reduces personal heal speed by 50%. This perk is insanely powerful. You can set this up, and it becomes a point on the map that a team can run to heal and quickly reset, removing any sort of pressure a killer has built up. It can be destroyed if found, but equally it can also be applied over and over to other totems or even the same totem. The ability to give a full team self-care and a 75% bonus to heal speeds in a set area is a very strong ability. Even after its many nerfs, this perk is extremely strong. In number 3 we have Sprint Burst, a perk that lets you sprint at 150% the normal running speed for 3 seconds, becoming exhausted after doing so. This perk is activated simply by running, making it a great way to instantly gain a huge head start in chase, wasting the killer's time from the get-go. This ability to instantly put distance between you and the killer is invaluable, often dodging what may have been a hit. If they do commit to the chase, they still waste more time than they would have. Sprint Burst is also great for map traversal when not in chase, letting you move across the map at a higher speed, simply by running. If you want to hold it, you can easily 99 the perk's exhaustion, using it at a more preferable time. In number 2 we have Borrowed Time. This perk is amazing. Whenever you save a teammate from a hook, they will gain the endurance status for the next 12 seconds. During this time, if they are hit, they will go into deep wound instead of being downed. This means pretty much every hook save is going to be a safe one, denying tunneling and camping, two of the most efficient killer strategies. In number 1 we have Dead Hard. This perk lets you boost forward when injured and negate all damage for a brief window after pressing the active ability button. This perk completely changes how chases pan out, forcing the killer to wait for you to dead hard. It lets you avoid all forms of attack, even attacks that would typically insta-down. This perk has a ton of utility, and yeah, it's amazing. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks! I'm losing my voice a little bit here. And goodbye.